Understand, me never lived outside God's house.
What?
So Bella's so much to discover. And your sad face makes me discover angry feelings for you.
Hi, I'm Sophie.
Hi, I'm Paul. And we are
SP Film Viewers.
first cinema trip of 2024.
Yeah, and of course it has to have Emma Stone in it. Because I don't know if SP know, or listeners know, that Paul loves Emma Stone ever since I've known you. First film we ever went to was Gangster Squad at the cinema, and that was with the lovely Emma Stone in.
Well, yet again, at that point wouldn't make sense, would it? Because you didn't know.
Well,
yeah,
any film Emma Stone's in, I think pretty sure we're going to see it. Not that I don't like her, I do. She's normally pretty good.
Yeah, was apparently, according to the Golden Globe, she did a pretty good performance in this film we're going to see at the cinema, which is Poor Things. And it's already, I think one of those things that I think has already been in the States and film festivals and such. Now we're finally getting it over here in the UK. I don't know why. So certain things, they seem to go on for such a long time, and after the world's talking about it, and it's like, well, yeah, that makes me want to see it even more. And it's like, when are we going to get it?
I guess, but then also I'm a bit like one of those things where it's like, oh, everyone's ramping it up saying it's really good, and then I don't want to be like going in thinking it's going to be amazing and then come out thinking, oh, well, actually, I don't really get that.
Yeah, I know.
And it being a bit of a letdown. I always feel like, not meaning this in a bad way, if it's being critiqued and high praised and everything, it normally seems to fall flat with me personally. So I'm a bit anxious to how I feel going into it. I'm trying to go in level-headed, so I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm going to be watching the best amazing thing, and then not be disappointed.
Well, I showed you the trailer. I didn't want to go because I'm sort of going in semi-blind as well, because I know it's like I don't want to know too much about it.
Yeah.
But what did you kind of get from the trailer?
It seems like a bit of a Frankenstein kind of vibe, like mad scientist
making
and morphing somebody into what they want.
More or less. It kind of looks like that way, but I feel like there's going to be some slight dark humour involved in it. I think it's the one it's award for it as a comedy film for this, and
it depends on at least if it's dark humour, it's all right as long as it's not like complete comedy.
Oh no, not from this direction. No.
It looked interesting how Emma Stone was playing her character from the trailer, like she's childlike in her aspects. That's intriguing, and maybe that's why she's won for whatever performance. Because obviously, it's not like she's just in a sitcom or in a rom-com.
Something a bit more challenging than
So we'll see.
Yeah,
I'm intrigued to watch it.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited. So.
I'm not going to say I'm excited, and then I might be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, let's go in and get out the cold and.
It's freezing.
Yeah, it's freezing. Going to check out Poor Things, and we'll be back in due time with a special guest as well, no less.
So hopefully if I hate it, at least you two can bring something to it.
Speak to you in a bit.
These two are fighting and ideas are banging around in Bella's head and heart like lights in a storm.
Oh. You're always reading now, Bella. You're losing some of your adorable way of speaking.
I'm a changeable feast, as are all of we. Apparently, according to Emerson, disagreed with by Harry.
Come, just come.
You were in my son.
What?
And we are back, having checked out Poor Things at the cinema.
Yeah.
And we're not alone.
We're not.
As we have a very special guest joining us for his first podcast debut. I'd like to welcome Jazz from the Instagram and Twitter page, Church of Cinema.
Woo!
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Excited to talk about Poor Things.
I think Paul's very excited to talk about Poor Things as well, since, just a bit of a fun fact, Paul loves Emma Stone, always has, always will. And I think we've got this in our relationship where if Emma Stone ever came, I would literally just get chucked aside, basically. So yeah, an interesting one for a woman to watch this film with her husband, and what happens and occurs in this film
Yeah.
is a whole new light of Emma Stone.
But what would you say is what have you got a ranking of your Emma Stone performances at all?
Oh, that's a good
Ooh,
question.
Well, I mean, one of the benchmarks for us is we really love La La Land, and so that's a good high performance.
But she keeps her clothes on, Paul.
Yeah,
That's the difference. Yeah.
more for your imagination then.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the film itself and the history of the director's name, which is Yorgos Lanthimos, who, he's a Greek director, and well, I've seen most of his films. One I haven't seen with Emma Stone and was The Favourite, which I started watching when we were on a flight back from Japan, but the jet lag hit me, and I was like, I couldn't finish it. I was just not feeling really nauseous when trying to watch.
I think that was a bit raunchy as well, wasn't it?
It was a bit as well. Maybe not. Maybe it didn't help, but
yeah.
So, how many? Are you familiar with the director's work and other stuff?
Yeah, I've seen The Lobster. I've seen The Favourite.
Yeah.
I've seen The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Dogtooth. We highly recommend every film I've mentioned so far.
Yeah.
The Favourite especially, because I think that kind of like cements his kind of his style, because obviously Poor Things is his second film in that same style with the wide lenses and whatnot.
I really liked Killing of a Sacred Deer. That one, there was something that really drew me into that one. There was like, I didn't know where it was going, and it kind of like, I was in, I think, a period of time of watching films. I was like, I don't know, the things are a bit stale, but that somehow just like really drew me in. It's like, it was so intriguing. I think it was this sort of style that he used in that, and I felt it was very much like a Kubrick element to his work. I don't know if you sort of agree with.
Yeah, and it's almost like the writing in itself, or the acting per se, is like very monotone, but it's like it's like you feel a bit uncomfortable in a way. That is how especially in The Lobster. Have you checked that out? Did you see have you seen that? Sorry.
I've seen The Lobster. That's not my. Yeah, I can get what you mean by the sort of style, how they kind of like rigid, and it's kind of a bit awkward how they act in that film. Very much so, but I definitely prefer Killing a Sacred Deer than that. You've seen this twice though, Poor Things, haven't you? Is that right?
Twice in 3 days.
Wow.
Blimey.
Yeah.
I booked it like beforehand, like because I knew this is gonna be my favorite film ever. The first time I watched, because it was I think Odin got it like a couple of days earlier than the release date.
Sure.
And my wife wasn't free then. I already had promised her that I'll watch it with her. So I don't worry, I'll watch it with you again on Friday. And she was still annoyed, but what can we do, eh?
At least you went twice, though, I guess. Like, you didn't leave her hanging and she had to go on her own or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I've not really seen anything. I don't think I've seen any of the other directors' work, have I? This is like my first time going into this.
Yeah, so you've got no real context. But in terms of the visual style, what did you say you make?
Well, the actual photography and the filming of this, we've got a fisheye lens, haven't we? That just keeps popping up
so often.
Yeah. You've got transitions from being in black and white to colour. You've got some beautiful shots, the way that they kind of artistically film.
It's almost like dreamlike in a sense.
And Emma Stone's performance at the beginning, I definitely love how you can see her acting skills, like how fantastic of an actor she actually is, because she is portraying a very much childlike self. And that's hard when you can walk and you can do all these things. And like she pees herself.
Yeah, there's some motor skills that you normally can control as an adult, but to pretend. that you very simple in that.
Absolutely adore that part.
And especially like you mentioned, like when she's like childlike, and you see her walking, and then I've just realized now as she's almost walking like a duck. So she's probably been copying the animals around her as well, because there's other animals that like. I'm sure there's a duck with a pug's head, and like
Yeah.
Yeah.
she's learning at a very quick pace. So she's probably just looking at the animals as well, like, oh, that's how you walk.
Yeah, like a child would. You see, maybe a cat or a dog in the household, and
Yeah.
based movements on that, and like, oh yeah, just walk on all fours essentially, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's quite endearing. And initially,
Yeah.
you're quite intrigued by this character and how she's going to progress, and you've got a bit of fondness towards her. And I really enjoyed Emma Stone's performance, because I think from what I've seen of Emma Stone, it's normally like a bit more shoehorned into like a bit of a rom-com kind of little environment. I know she's done or
got
comedy.
That humor, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's comical, but it's done in a really artistic way that actually shows off her skills of an actress.
Mhm.
I quite like the way that it is in black and white, and the house and the staircase, and the way that you've got all this beautiful photography within it, and where they're living is like this private little bubble that they're on.
Mhm.
And is it God?
God or
God.
Godfrey, but then she calls him God. Yeah, I like that kind of like way of thinking, because I say it's very much like a Frankenstein
Yeah.
story. The creator making, I say, a monster, but it's more like just reanimating someone back to life. As well, so spoilers for the film. I should have really prefaced.
Oh yeah, we should have done.
But yes, Emma Stone has a baby's brain, her own baby that she sadly lost.
Well, she was
Lost
carrying,
her life.
wasn't she? Yeah.
She kills herself, and I think the baby's alive.
Mhm.
She's dead, and then he's like, "Oh, I can." Rather than saving the baby, like any normal, but he's a scientist, in the name of science, do an experiment. And as you mentioned earlier about the transitioning of from black and white to color,
Mhm.
it's quite clear as soon as when it goes to color. And I wrote this in my review. It's like as soon as have to tip my hat off to Yorgos Lanthimos for transitioning Bella's world from black and white to color as soon as she discovers her sexual awakening.
Mhm.
Like, it's the first time they have sex with Mark Ruffalo's character. Is it Duncan Wedderburn or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very he's a great, like, he's really funny in this. Like, he's, and this particularly more that as the film goes on, he becomes more and more flustered with and
It's
annoyed
quite
with
funny actually,
Yeah.
because she's putting spins on him and he's feeling uncomfortable,
So,
and
where
I
it's
think
like the roles reversed in a
Yeah.
sense, isn't it? Yeah.
Because he's almost confused at it, like for everything she says. He's like, really like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like, it's just hilarious.
Yeah, it's like you don't know what bananas are, but then you know what da 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 means. So it's really like long word
It's
that's
like,
plucked out of a dictionary.
I think it's just like a scientific word or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. I think though his character went for her because of the naivety and the innocence of her initially. And from a woman's perspective, it's kind of preying on the young a little bit. He knows she's naive. She's a delicate little flower. She hasn't popped a cherry. And it's one of those things of like, oh, well, it's an easy kind of thing.
Mhm.
She doesn't have any expectations on what that should be like. So she doesn't know any better. So he could be absolutely crap and she'd be fine with it. And I think he likes the fact that she is that naive, and he's the one that wants to kind of explore her. When she begets more worldly wise, that's when he's like, I don't know what to do with her. Like, I can't handle her anymore. She's gone too extreme, and it actually makes him go psychotic, doesn't it?
It does. It is quite funny.
Yeah, but I think that when he starts getting a bit crazy is because as soon as she has her own voice, he's like, oh crap, I don't have her under my thumb anymore. Like my sex doesn't mean anything to her anymore. Like, because she's kind of grown.
I don't think he's actually had that in a relationship before. So I think Bella has really pushed him out of his comfort zone. I think everybody's just worshipped him and idolized him when he's been in a relationship that
Yeah.
he assumed she would, because she hasn't had anything else. So she would be quite besotted by him. And she is infatuated
For a little while.
for a little while.
Even to the fact that it's like, oh, why do people do this all the time type of thing, and he's like, well, yeah, even I have my limits type of thing.
Well, I think
like,
every man has their limits.
It's like, and they're sort of like the male-female things, like, oh, well, so you're saying you're inferior than a woman, and it's like, kind of, yeah, which is kind of interesting, women empowerment kind of thing in that sense.
And then he has that line. He used the word thrice, which I think people need to start using that word again. He goes like, he says something along the lines of, "You've been fucked thrice by the great."
Greatest, yeah, braggadocious.
Yeah,
being all high and mighty, basically. But yet again, he thinks he's amazing, and she don't have anything to compare. So for her, it is the most best sex she's ever had because it's the only one she's had. So how does she know any different? But obviously later on in the lines and the story, this is a bit where I kind of, from a woman perspective, find it a bit more challenging. And I think I really went into this thinking, oh, the reviews have been brilliant. Everybody loves it. And I always think somehow for me, it falls a little bit flat when I know that it's meant to be so good.
Okay, yeah.
So I was like, trying to be really open-minded. And at the beginning, I absolutely loved the childlike stage. I think that was my favourite part. And then the ending kind of rehoned where you've got a new revised Bella and you can see her growth and transitions throughout. The middle bit is just pretty much sex, isn't it?
Yes.
For some part.
A lot of sex.
Yeah.
And isn't it about 2 hours and a half, this film?
Yeah.
It's 15,
like, for me, like your regular male pervert, even I lost count of how many sex scenes there were in this film. So I was like, I had to shake my head a bit. What's going on? Like, I was confused as like how and why, but they all make sense.
It does at the end, and but then I'm thinking, can we have cut it down a bit? Because it didn't need to be 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I'm sure some of the sex scenes could have gone, but that I don't know if that's just a woman's perspective, and also the fact that you love Emma Stone doesn't help.
Despite all of that, like saying, "Oh, I'm not there," going, "Oh yes, I finally get to see her naked," and I'm there like jacking it in the cinema.
Thank God.
Be a bit wrong. Wife next to me and everything, time and a place. But it's sort of like it's still like kind of there's a level of respect for it. It's not like it doesn't come. It comes off more of an artistic way in a sense, rather than just like, oh yeah, it's. Like from like a horror film where it's kind of like just gratuitous for the sake of doing it, or it doesn't add anything really. It's kind of just like people just getting down and dirty for no particular reason. Where this did have a purpose, although I will admit it's like some of it, but maybe didn't need to see absolute. Well, I'm sure it wasn't absolutely every encounter, but it may as well have been for the most part. And I know there was one part where you were like, "Oh, that's weirded me out." That guy that was like. Crawl on the floor like a spider or whatever he was doing, and that was a bit like, oh, it was a bit weird.
So weird, but that for me that was like that made it even more better because like if a film can make you feel uncomfortable, I think that's a plus point for me. Like I know it's uncomfortable. I take everything as a positive sometimes. You gotta that uncomfortableness.
Oh, it attacked me. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, Jesus, if that man came crawling at me, I swear to God, I would have kicked him in the face. Like how she's like laying on like that sofa smiling. I'm like, I'd have been absolutely sick to my stomach.
I can only imagine that was part of her role play. Like because obviously at that point she's found a system where she can like also enjoy the sex as well. So I can only imagine that was her kind of role play, like, oh, you be a weird crab person or something, and then I'll like her version of a role play, which towards obviously is fucking vile, but she's having the time of her life.
I think it's an experimental piece for her. And you, bless you, Paul, you did try and, after we'd watched this film, kind of give me a bit more context and say, well, just think of it as it's like your teen years where you're wanting to experiment and try everything out. And that's kind of what she's doing at that stage, which is valid, I guess.
Yeah. But then she's also wanting, at that point, she's also like, I'm wanting to also go and study as well. So it's kind of like, I guess you would at uni, where like you're going to do that. You want to better yourself for your career, essentially. But then you also want to have a bit of fun at the same time. And
yeah, but normally you don't get paid for it.
True.
He got paid, and it was And we find out, like, obviously in that world, because it was when she goes back home, and she says, I did it for had sex for money, and he's like, yeah, that's fine. And then she tells him it's like for like 20 franc or something. He's like, that's like he says something along the lines of like, that's unbelievably cheap.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I think for her, the concept of money, you can tell within this, is also showing a coming of age of like growing up and being an adult. Because to be fair, when you're little, you want everything, but you don't really realize how you get it. And then when obviously Mark Ruffalo's character is whining and dining her, she's getting everything she wants. She doesn't have to think about it. She's got a bit of a sugar daddy kind of going on. And then when she sees like the poor being quite isolated and babies dying and realizing actually there's a bigger world than what I've
what she's been involved with. It's like, oh yeah, there's more to this, and I want to make a difference. And so she takes upon herself to give the money to some trustworthy people who will definitely give the money to the poor.
But the fact is, it's all the money. Like, it's one of those things where, obviously an adult head would think, oh, I will give some money, but I wouldn't leave it so I have nothing. And that kind of innocence is still
there, the naivety of it.
Yeah.
There's one thing I wanted to just bring up, because I
Mm.
did a bit of homework, because I was like, oh,
Good.
That's good.
I do none, so at least somebody does something.
so there's as you most definitely remember the dance scene in the film, and
Yes.
it does seem like a random messy scene, but
Mhm.
it's actually choreographed, and it took them 60 takes to do, and as well, it does tell a story.
All right.
I can
Okay.
break it down for you, but I'm not going to take full credit for this, because whereas I may have noticed on the second viewing that means something, but obviously I went onto TikTok, searched in the dance scene, see what will come up. So I'm going to give credit to the TikToker Straw Hat Goofy. He's like a film reviewer and film analyzer per se, and so should I go straight into it and break it down?
100%
Yeah,
go for
by all
it.
means, yeah.
So she hears music, and because obviously she's following her heart, like she has the whole film. Throughout the film, she's like following her heart, so she just wants to dance, and she just starts dancing wherever heart says, throw your arms that way, here, there. And then of course Duncan sees her, like she's just gone off again, which she's been going off all through up until that point. She's been going off on her own, and he's like, no, I've had enough of you. You're mine. You're like, he's trying to get that ownership. So you see him going up to her, dancing up to her like a little sleazeball, and then he tries to snatch her.
Mhm.
And then the first thing, I'm gonna break down some of the dance moves. You see her like kicking her legs backwards, and that's her basically saying she's trying to get away from him.
Mm.
And then it all almost switches, where she kind of has him, and she's kind of using him like a puppet, and he's like, and that's trying to say like, no,
Yeah.
it's my turn to do what I want to do. And then there's almost a power struggle when they're holding hands, and they start spinning.
Mhm.
That's like spiraling out of control. Like we don't
Yeah.
know who's in control. And then all of a sudden after that, they almost, for a brief moment, they were equally dancing the same move, so that they kind of like got equal ground. And then she finally breaks away, because she's like, I'm escaping. And then he continues to attempt to grab her. And then Duncan, they both do this leg move where they got the one leg up, and like they're going around in a circle. Meaning of that is that Duncan's saying, hey, remember this furious jumping?
Ah.
Yes, the furious jumping.
He's like, nah, I'm free. So it's like almost instantly after that scene, the next scene is him putting her in in a box, so that he can like
Mhm.
just keep it all to himself and keep her hostage. I don't know if you watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Mm.
There's the implication, with the get a girl into a boat where she can't escape. Then she'll be yours. So that's what they went through
Right,
when
yeah.
they were writing this film.
Now you said that, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
And I think for Bella's character, she always has a sense of feeling trapped and encaged and sheltered. And even when we go into the next part where we kind of realize Bella who she was as her former self before she kind of committed suicide, is she's still feeling that same entrapment in that life.
Yeah.
So being on a boat for her is the worst thing, but also when she saw the ocean, that kind of felt like for me, it was triggering some form of emotion for her.
She didn't realise what it was. It kind of like, I feel like I've been here before. This is just uncertain of what this means. But yeah, for us, the audience, we kind of know what that sort of represents. So like something from essentially a past life in a way. Quite daunting.
I didn't think of that. No, that makes sense. That makes more sense because she sees the ocean, she doesn't say anything. She never, if you think about it, she doesn't ever like ask what the hell's that. Like she kind of has it in the back of her mind, or some sort. Even though that brain has never seen it, there must be some what's it called, maternal.
Yeah, instinct.
Yeah, there's some form of connection to it, and because you can kind of see this like dauntingness of the sea and being trapped on a boat, and all she wants to do is explore as well, and basically stopped her doing that.
Yeah,
and then she has to like get more like insight from other people that are on the boat and who are more intelligent and offer more for her to like digest information off from and converse with, rather than just what Duncan offers, really, because it's like a little bit limited on, like, especially as she's hungry for information.
She really is, and I think that's what a childlike person is. When you're growing and developing, you want to know everything and you want to know it right now, and that's where she's at. And I think she's exhausted what Duncan can provide for her, and she sees like, now actually you're not really, the way that she talks about it, like, I'm feeling angry emotions towards you now, and I don't think I like talking to you. And it's still childlike the way she speaks, but don't you wish sometimes you could say that? Like, when you get to a point where you're like, right, I'm done talking to you, I'm just going to walk off.
And even her filters in when she's obviously having that dinner conversation, like, you've only got 3 things to say in this conversation from going forward, and those kind of things. And it's like, oh, how terrible or whatever. When it's like, it's not an appropriate time to say it, and it's like, oh,
100%. And I think that's just showing her social awareness. Like, if she's not interested, she's not going to put that effort into it. Whereas with the elderly lady on the ship, I think she really kind of encourages Bella to read, and like, there's more out there. And like the fact that she was like, oh, well, I haven't had sex in 20 odd years. And
she's like, oh, how terrible for you. I'm really sorry.
It's the way she speaks as well. She's like, please tell me you use your hand.
Yeah. And then she's like, oh, I'm sorry, that's impolite. So you can tell, like, somebody's told a child off saying, oh, no, you can't say that. But she's still slipped up somehow. And I think that's the way it's been cleverly written. And the way that she performs it is flawless throughout. Like, she is brilliant.
At this point, when she's on the ship and she meets the 2 people on that dinner table, I'm almost like, I'm happy for her that she's met them 2 people, because you meet people in your life and you like, people that you want to keep close. And I think she would look back later on in her life and say, I met them 2 people that changed my life. Because one, the lady showed her like philosophy and everything like that, and then the gentleman. See how I say gentleman and lady, because I respect them. He admits himself that he does it to torture her in a way. That there's more to this world in terms of being happy. There's misery in this world, and he points it out to her. And then that's almost where at that point, I think that's where she kind of doesn't grow up straight away, but she kind of has fused with that emotion as well.
100%. And I think even though he's kind of been cruel, I think it's a cruel to be kind, going, everything's not just roses, and the world does have bad things in it, and you're going to have a bad day, and it's just, that's okay to have a bad day. Whereas I think initially she's been kind of cotton-wooled and everything's been quite nice.
Yeah, I think it was there was a slight hint of that when it was when she was it Portugal, wasn't it? It was like her first stop off, wasn't it?
Yeah, the first one.
And she's kind of like walking around by herself, and she kind of almost like, she hears the song, and then she goes down an alleyway somewhere, and then it's almost like someone's having an argument or something. It's a bit like, oh, right, okay, everything's not rosy.
And I think she gets it feels like she's getting told off because she's
like,
just observing.
What are you looking at? Kind of, obviously in the Spanish language, but yeah, it's a bit like I don't know like what's going on here. Kind of this is a bit odd. Like everything all looks bright and colourful, and yeah, she's kind of just like I don't understand what's going
And I
on.
really like the way that it goes down the like alleyway, and you can kind of get the shadows and the casting, and you can see like it's getting darker. And you know that it's changing turns into like actually things aren't always nice.
Mhm.
Do we have to talk about the ship as well? Just the way that it looks like not an actual ship, and it looks like it's got like green. Is it green steam? And it looks
Yeah, it's like any building with steel. It's always green, wasn't it? It was like I'm sure there has to be some meaning behind
there
that
must
now.
be
Yeah.
because even like when there's like bubbles and the way that it's kind of like there's in the air, there's like this weird thing. I think that's in another place. And even when we're looking at the people suffering, that doesn't seem.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to be grounded in our world, but there's also kind of like something a bit off about it, almost like some ways like I feel like it's like a dollhouse, like like a colourful like playing with toys type of thing, and especially like when Emma was moving around in the scene, kind of like almost like stiff, like a doll would be. I don't know if there's anything in that, but it's kind of it feels that way. Like it's a bit surreal, I suppose. Is the best way to describe it, I guess.
It's almost like that Plastic Beach Gorillaz album.
Yes, yeah,
Cartoony, but not cartoony at the same time.
yeah. I get what you mean.
That feel.
Yeah, definitely. We haven't actually talked about obviously Willem Dafoe and his character, particularly the creator. His performance, yeah, it's very muted, I suppose, but he's letting obviously Emma Stone's Bella shine more. So it's more her story at the end of the day. But coming back to him now and again, it's kind of good to say, and he's he just really he's really interesting in the sort of like the way he's kind of like obviously his makeup and all that kind of stuff really comes across as
You learn a lot about him through his stories about his father. So obviously, all his himself,
yeah.
he has been an experiment all his life from his father. You can like understand why he, instead of saving the baby,
Yeah.
he did his own experiment on Bella. So you kind of understand in a way, although you don't agree, you kind of understand because he's been an experiment all his life. That's all he knows, and it's been almost passed down to him. But yeah, like I think the prosthetic face that he has on is like. But I gotta say as well, like, have you seen any film like this before? Like, because in my eyes, I kind of like feel I'm almost like obviously storyline wise, it's been done like before, but
Yeah.
I'm what about just in general? Like, it just feels like it comes every now and then. Like a film like this comes every now and then, where I'm almost like swept off my feet, kind of thing. Like, wow,
Yeah,
it's just crazy.
I'm really I can't think of anything that springs to mind off the top of my head. Certainly, that nothing could sort of compare it to. It's got like, as I say, it's got so many different elements to it, and obviously like the sort of the camera work and stuff like that. I know I haven't seen The Favourite, but I kind of vaguely know from what I remember, kind of like the sort of like the space within the house, particularly that was kind of like the framing and stuff like that. And I'm trying to think back to what from Killing of the Sacred Deer, but I think that was kind of like much more open space as well, and just the way that was positioned and stuff like that. But in terms of like a visual style, as I say, like kind of like that kind of like weird surrealist landscape, particularly, and how it was done, I can't really get that. But it's a good thing to have, like something unique, and I think that's from what obviously his body of work that he's done. Yorgos has done that. It's really intriguing. I'm really happy with how it's turned out. I'm more happy that Emma Stone's got to be a part of it because like she's one of my favorite. Not just for that part. If honestly, like if it was wasn't doing the thing, wouldn't.
I think it'd add better value if that wasn't in there, Paul. But yeah.
If there's no sex scenes, I don't think it'll be my favorite film.
I think it'd be a better film. But to be honest, the parts when I do enjoy, it's okay, there was a bit where it was like, okay, this is dragging for me. There's a lot of sex scenes going on. Can we just get on with the story? But I think actually every part of the story you grew to love Bella as a character a lot within the film. And I feel like even her creator, he wasn't doing it in a malicious way. I think
No,
because
he
he
really
was
cared.
always an experiment,
Yeah.
that's how he associated love. And I think he loved her and treated her like a daughter. And it actually broke his heart when she wanted to leave.
Yeah. And also got Max as well, who's obviously mentioned, because he's like besotted with her as like, you know, like a assistant to him. And he's like, oh, she's really pretty for a
Retard.
yeah. For what was a better of a term, yeah.
And what's it called? What they going to touch about Godwin? It's almost like you know, because he's upset that she's run away and like he's let her go. She's not really run away, sorry. But it's almost like maybe I'm not a parent myself, but I can only imagine the reason why he creates another one is because it's almost like he needs a replacement.
Yeah.
So I'm only getting why parents have more than one child, not because like they know that one's gonna go away soon. Let's have another one, but it could be.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
But it still doesn't fill that hole.
It's not the same.
It's not the same because Bella is progressed so much quicker than the other creation that he'd done, and he could tell he was trying not to get attached because he didn't want to hurt his feelings, and he somewhat resented the second creation a little bit towards the end.
Do you think that might be true in real life as well? Like, do you think every second child is hated as well? Because I'm the fourth child, so I know if they're stopping at 4, it's because they liked it, they like the product. But for the second one, is it better than the first? Should we go for a third?
I'm the second one, and I think it's one of those things where the second one gets away with murder more because the first one is running them ragged already. So the second one doesn't get as much focus and attention. And you're a bit more sassy then because you haven't had that much support. So you're actually creating a bit more of a character for yourself. So you're probably going to get into trouble more often because you haven't had that assistance there. That's how I see it. But when you grow up, I feel like the second one becomes the favourite.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, but when you're younger, it's not.
Well, it's like for me, where I think,
Oh, you're the golden boy, aren't you?
apparently, if my brother, bless him, if they had if he was before me, then they probably wouldn't have had another child because of the way he sort of acts. He's not like rebellious or anything. I think it's just that how
Just drags his feet a lot.
Bit,
He's
a bit more lax. But whereas yeah.
So you encouraged them to have a second one, and then they weren't as good as the first. Is that what you're saying, Paul?
Yeah. Seems that way.
And then we have that the other character, the one that she's Bella is to marry. His actor, I've not really seen him in much, but I know that his name's Ramy Youssef, I believe.
Yes.
And he's got his own show, like a sitcom type show. I think A24 are like they do produce. I might be wrong on that, but he has like his own comedy show, sitcom, like where it's just about his life. And Remy is called.
Okay.
Apparently, that got really good reviews and whatnot. But yeah, seeing him as his first major role seemed like, obviously at first it's like, oh, that's pretty random, but it was a nice character. He's like the only sweet thing about it's like poor things, and then there's one sweet thing.
yeah, because he's bless him. He's kind of like he doesn't know what to sort of really do with himself, really, because he's really affectionate towards her, but because obviously she's like say naive and everything, and she kind of like just veers off, and it's like, oh, you kind of leaving, we're due to be wed and everything, and it's like because he's really smitten with her, essentially, Bella, essentially, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to go off and. And a wonderful adventure, like we get married and everything. I kind of feel like he's he's just lovelorn, really. Yet he's still pining for her after the fact and kind of worried about her and stuff. And even then, when she comes back to London, and it all kind of works out for him, and I guess, but he's like, she admits like, oh yeah, I've had lots of sexual partners and everything, and I've got to get get tested to because like a lot of diseases. And it's like, yeah, that's fine, kind of thing. I think he's just so infatuated with her. It's like, yeah, I don't care what you've done in the past, that's behind us now. Let's just move forward. I think so. Kind of the fact that you can look all past that, because some people be like, well, I don't want to be involved with you. You're a bit of a. That's
Yeah.
He says the one thing that I think that every man should be saying to anyone in that position. I merely hate that I couldn't spend that valuable time with you myself, rather than, so it's not like an ownership, like that time that you spent with them, I wish I had that. I had your borrowed time, whatever. I don't know the exact trying to say, but you know what I mean.
No, I get what you mean. It's more of a sweeter way of putting it, rather than just like, I wanted to control you kind of thing. Like, I just wanted to be around you, basically.
Yeah, and I think he definitely is a gentleman. So initially, when God says, "Oh, I want you to marry her," I can tell that there's a connection there, and he doesn't want to push his luck. He doesn't want to make Bella feel uncomfortable. He's definitely wants to be like, whenever Bella's ready, and even when Bella does want it, he's kind of like, "Oh no, I don't think it's the right time yet," and you can see kind of him wanting to respect her so much that he's actually not giving her probably what she needs and wants right now. And that's why she has to go and kind of spread her wings to then realize actually he's the one that she wants. And bless him, he still don't get it at the actual altar, does he?
No, yeah, because that was the previous love. He comes into the picture and it's like, oh, come on, man, really, like, just let them have this bit of happiness. And then, but again,
he does say, like, "You're not going to stop me, are you?" And you can see his face. He's like, "No," but you can tell, like, he really wants to just get married to her. He just, like, she's taken away, but he's so sweet that he's just going to let her do what she wants, because he knows she's a sweetheart. Well, she's an experiment, and like, he needs to let her be free, basically.
Yeah.
And that makes, as a woman's perspective, he's actually the right one for her, but she needs to experiment and figure everything out so that she can realize it and come back to him comfortably and spend time with him when it's right for both of them to be together. So let's talk about her actual still husband as her former self as well, because that yet again is another entrapment, and it's awful seeing her in that situation.
Yeah, and she's referred to as Victoria, isn't she?
Mhm.
In that as well. That's a true name, as it were, really, to him anyway.
And I think it must be hard for her because she now knows that actually she's her mother's body, but her baby form's brain. And she finds out that actually her mother didn't want her, but you're in your own mum's body. So from a female perspective, that must be quite hard to actually think, well, I'm my mum, but I'm also myself. And I didn't want myself.
Yeah. And from that, it's also like, what was the reason for me, which I think she goes just go into the films, like, what was the reason that I decided to jump, or take my life? What was and it's like, because of the husband being so manipulative and controlling.
I just have a quick question for you, Paul.
Yeah.
Like, just going back to the wedding scene per se. How absolutely stunning did Emma Stone look with that whole the the veil type thing around her face? How white was that veil? It just looked crisp, and it just looked so amazing. Like, that's a great shot. Like, and the way it's just basically just tied around her face. That's it. And it's just like how simple it was. Just the costume design just for that was just like chef's kiss. You know.
No, they did look pretty great. Yeah.
I love how he then looks at me like, oh, have I said, no, she looks stunning,
No,
Paul. You're allowed to say that. It's only when she's jumping that I would be like, okay, calm down now. But when she's got clothes on, you can say she's absolutely stunning. It's fine. Yet again, entrapped in a castle that she can't get out of. I feel like it's like a Disney story at this point a little bit, because it's like, well, I feel like a prince should come and rescue her and save her, but that doesn't actually happen. You see Bella outsmarting yet again another man.
Yeah, she has to outwit him, and because like he's like, what was it? It was like was it a syringe or something that he was going to? Oh no, he poisoned
her drink,
a cocktail, didn't he? Laced it with something.
He mentioned there's chloroform in there, like in a liquid. Like,
that's right. Yeah.
It's sad for her as well, because she's like, I've been trapped all my life, and then it turns out my real life before this whole experiment well, my mother's, if you think about it, was also entrapment.
Mm.
So it's just feel like she's never going to catch a break. But yeah, it's really sad for her.
No, I agree. And I think for her, she sees how her mother lived. And I think it was quite impressive when she went, so I'm not a nice person then, as my former self. And she could actually see that actually the life they were living wasn't the right way to be. And so you could actually see like a child learning right from wrong in a sense from her parents doing.
Yeah.
Because I found this a bit weird from a woman's perspective. If I'm in my mum's body, but I've got my baby brain, I'm dating my dad, aren't I, at that point?
Oh shit, yeah. I just realized. Yeah, I just realized. I don't know why. And maybe it's because I'm a male that I just don't think of this. But that has just blew me away. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. So it's a little bit incesty, isn't it, if you think about it? Because that is technically it's baby's brain. I think from me, it's like, well, actually, she's not herself. He knows she's not his like late wife. Like she's obviously passed on and she's no longer here, and she's completely a different person. So for him, it is just the physicality of that person being present, not actually realizing, well, you're not my wife. You're not. It's like somebody being cloned of me, but having a different personality completely.
Mhm.
But yet you still want to keep them around just because you feel like that person's there, but they're not. I think it's a controlling thing. So actually, it's weird to think, well, could that be in a father-daughter relationship? How would that have panned out if he knew that actually it is my daughter in my wife's body?
But at the same time, you probably wouldn't be able to comprehend
No.
that because of certainly of that time. You'd be like, oh, that's preposterous type of thing, or whatever kind of thing like that. It would be unheard of, really, kind of like
Mm.
thing. And you probably do something very rash to, react to that or something, and just I don't know, take it a really really dark
Yeah,
turn.
yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely just murder suicide or something. That's what like Eddie. Well, judging by his character, I'm guessing that's what he would do. Like he just do a murder suicide
Mm.
because he wants to live his lavish life.
It does, yeah. And also, I say, I'm glad kind of like how he got sort of like lobotomized,
Yeah.
essentially. Because he was a bit of an ass when he's like, oh, just getting the maid to just, come in with the soup or whatever and then get the dog to bark. And it's like,
So,
that was funny, wasn't it? Kind of thing.
Mm.
And just pointing the gun at, whoever he felt like, was like, oh, this isn't right. Or is this food cooked or whatever? And it's like, yeah. So getting characters who get the comeuppance that way
Yeah.
is always satisfying.
And I love the way that Bella brings him back home and she's like, we need to improve him. And it's like, he's an experiment. We need to work on him and make him better.
and it also almost instantly it's a shot of the goat.
Yeah, and then you like you know where this is going type of thing.
Yeah, but then you almost like forget for a second. Like you don't think, you don't think, oh, she's gonna put him in, put the goat's brain in his head, and then the last shot basically is just him like just acting like a goat, and I just think that was just beautifully done. That's much
Yeah.
needed.
I think the ending really does triumph and you kind of get that conclusion and it is a happy ending for Bella. Like obviously she's taking on God or Gaud or whatever his name is place and you can see that she's wanting to learn and become a scientist and do her own experiments and I assume she's married.
Yeah, she's
or
with him.
she's-
With Max at that point. Now, obviously, they will get married at some point. But yeah, she's got him. He's got the girl. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got what he wanted, and they've got this nice place where they can reside. And yeah, so and she can keep learning.
But don't you kind of wish a bit like they thought, okay, why don't I put Godwin's brain inside this guy's head, let him live on, or does it? Because I'm guessing humans can only live up to a certain age to be without until the brain cell starts going. It's just going to be Godwin with dementia eventually, wouldn't it? It would be like
True. Yeah. Because
in a younger body.
That's maybe why it works with obviously Bella's being the young brain in the
Older body.
so that the brain of the child develops, and so I think that's probably why.
Whereas the brain would deteriorate over time.
Yeah, it would. But I mean, it might have for a brief moment, who would still have him around. I guess.
Yeah, you would have him for
I
longer.
don't know if that's too cruel to be kind. Maybe I don't. Too cruel. I don't know, but to keep him alive when he doesn't need to be.
I guess the comical aspect of it, with the goat, kind of works.
Just more, Well, I don't know if there's any other points you want to bring up, Jazz.
No, that's all. That's perfect.
I think the last thing, I was struggling, especially when it's seeing the film for the first time, and unless it's really right there with you from the beginning, like the score essentially. Obviously, like listening out with how it plays out through the film. I did re-listen to the soundtrack today a little bit. Obviously, I'm always a sucker for like a score and stuff, but this one's really really solid with obviously like the violins, things like that. It kind of fits the mood, especially. It's kind of like when you go back through it and the track listens all that. I try and remember from that particular scene where that might have occurred and stuff, like the emotion you get from it. But did you like the score?
I liked it, but I definitely wouldn't have it on my like Spotify playlist. Like it's not like
Oh, no,
but I'm
no, it's
not
not.
saying that's what you do. But I mean, like what I mean is like it is very like chaotic. Do you get what I mean? It's like
Yes,
it's beautiful while you're watching the movie and everything is like immaculate.
yeah,
But like it's almost like gets the adrenaline going. I wouldn't use it at the gym. It gives you that anxious feeling at some a certain point, and
hmm
I like that. I love that. Yeah.
yeah. See, it's done a good job if it fits the mood of the film and the scenes in particular it's going for. So yeah, chaotic is a good way to describe it, I suppose.
And I think that's what's nice is the music doesn't overtake it. You kind of get swept away with like this full kind of masterpiece when you're watching it, from the way that the camera angles are, the lighting, everything, and then the music, the way that Emma Stone just shines throughout the film pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Oh, one other thing I remember.
Oh, now I've said Emma Stone, you remember?
No. It was obviously I was thinking back to like you said the fish lens effect.
Oh, yeah.
I also noticed a lot of like zoom ins as
And
well.
wide angles, yeah.
Like when the characters like focusing and then come back, and it's like I don't know if there was any particular reason for that really, but
I've noticed that films nowadays they've started to bring that back, the zooming in, and it's funny that I saw a review on Letterboxd. I can't remember who it is, so forgive me if anyone's listening who it is. But a review on Letterboxd saying that Yorgos will because he's using these wide angle lenses, eventually it's going to get wider and wider. Then eventually he's going to be wide enough to see him filming the film.
that's it's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So it's time for scoring. It's a scoring system of 1 being lowest, 10 being the highest, and you can do 0.5s or whatever you like to rate it. So, Jazz, what is your score for this film?
I would say, because obviously on Letterboxd you can only give it out of 5, and you can only
Yeah.
go half down or half high.
Yeah.
If we're going out of 10, I'm going to give a 9.7. The 0.3 is because it's not like it's not Clerks. Clerks is one of my favorite films ever. Completely different film to it. You cannot compare the two. But
Yes.
it's not that film, so it can't be a 10 out of 10. Having said that, like I mentioned earlier, a film like this doesn't come frequently. It's swept me off my feet, and I can't wait to watch it for a third, fourth time.
Do you think? I know it's early to say, but and obviously it came out in the States into 2023. But do you think for us in the UK residency in this film, do you think this is likely a contender for a film of the year? Maybe.
I reckon so, yes. Because looking forward of what films are coming out, there's a handful of films that would be like hyped up, but I don't think anything is going to be as artistic. But I reckon it's going to be at the top of my for quite a long time, for this year anyway. Obviously, each year my slate is always cleaned, and but yeah, I reckon it's going to be up there.
Well, I am going to give this film a 9.5. It's not full marks, even with the obviously love for Emma Stone, but I think there's for the first watch that for me there was part way in the middle part it was kind of like dragged a tiny bit. I think on rewatches it might improve, it might go to 10. I don't know, but we'll have to see in time. I think it would probably more like getting on disc. 4K I imagine will look pretty nice on the TV more for various reasons.
Oh, I see.
On my first viewing, the middle part was a bit like, oh, what's this? Like, but on the second viewing, you'll have a more appreciation of it because you'll be already because we've already analyzed it ourselves right now from your first viewing, but you'll appreciate the middle part a bit more because it's like a puzzle piece. Everything will start
Yeah.
colliding, and you're like, okay, it'll be a 9.6. I'm telling you right now.
Increment, yeah. And so, what, pray tell, is yours? Go.
So, I think for me, this is the first time seeing this kind of film and from this director as well. So, obviously, going in blindsided a little bit.
Mhm.
Also, from a woman's perspective, it's probably one of those where you watch it and then I probably won't be like Jazz and go straight back to this. I think I'd need a little bit of time away and then reflect and want to watch it later on. I think it's definitely a mood piece.
Mhm.
You have to be in the frame of mind to want to watch it and to see it and value it for what it is and invest time into the film.
Yeah.
So, not saying that Emma Stone didn't do a cracky performance, she did. I agree with you. The middle bit was like, ugh, there's a lot of sex scenes going on. This is dragging a little bit, but that I can't say that the beginning and the end weren't fantastic. But just to give a background, my 10 is Singing in the Rain. Normally, when I watch a film, I want to feel good about myself and feel quite happy once I've finished the cinema. However, I came out thinking, wow, that's a lot I've just watched. And your brain's on overdrive trying to process it all. And I don't think I've still fully processed it all. So I'm going to say at the moment it's going to be a 7.5. And I know that sounds low. It would increase from a different watch and maybe a lot of fast forwards through the sex scenes.
But I think you're right in saying that it's like a mood piece. Like you have to be in the mood. Like for alcohol, for example, you're not gonna have you're not gonna just have a shot of whiskey. You time of day, right? Frame of mind, and yeah, completely agree with you in terms of yeah. You said 7.5, which is respectable.
It is.
And I think once you let it breathe. Also, the film is about life, so it is going to be draining in a sense because, like, obviously, we live in a world where we're trying to figure out our own life, and if there's an artistic approach of somebody else's life, which is an experiment, and they're trying to figure out what life is, the dying question we all want to know, it's going to be draining, and it could take you away from the film a bit.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think going in from a second watch, that will be probably more enjoyable than the first watch, like you said, just because you know what's coming, you're anticipating everything. You're not going to have a curveball as much, and you can. I feel like it's one of those things you can unpick loads of different things, and what you've seen the first time, you won't see the second time. And yet again, if you keep watching, it's going to be one of those films that just keeps giving eventually.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of merit to revisit for that, really.
Yeah. And we always like when that gives us value add and wants to repeat watch, don't we?
It's definitely not one of like, I'd never want to see it again type of thing.
Not a one and done.
No. So thank you very much, Jazz, for joining us on this episode. And where can people find you on the socials?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's lovely to talk to you guys about this film.
Thank you.
With where they can find me, my main place at the moment is Instagram, and that's at Church of Cinema. I'm on X as well, formerly known as Twitter, if you don't know. It's Church of Cinema. But the O in of is a 0 because somebody else has taken that name. One day I'll buy them out. I promise. Yeah. And then I do also have a website. Slowly putting reviews on. Nothing much on that at the moment. Just a handful of reviews, and that is the Church of Cinema. Don't forget the the.com.
Definitely go and follow, do all of that thing, and give the support. And it's been lovely speaking to you and having you on. It's nice always having someone from an outside perspective that brings a little bit of clarity or different perspective onto it, which is always enjoyable for me because it opens up my little bubble.
Perfect.
Thank you for joining us once again. See you later.
See ya. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode, and a big thank you to our special guest. If you want to check out some of our other episodes, you You can do so by going to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and wherever else you get your podcasts from. And we'd really appreciate you leave us a 5-star review on any of those platforms as well. A big thank you to the Patreons for supporting the show, who are Mark from 100 Things to Learn from Film, Ben from Film Vloggers, Nico from the Good, the Bad, the Weird podcast, Chris Gren, who is cgren_draw on Instagram, Alex, who is desperately seeking username on Instagram, Shani, who is SDOG on Instagram, Danny Jones, or Jonesy, who is at WeightLossJonesy on Instagram, Emma, who is M_Hayton on Instagram, and of course Sophie's mum. And if you would like a shout out on each of our episodes and the opportunity to vote on what we watch once a month, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/SP Filmviewers to sign up for as little as £1 or $1.50 a month, and gets you those little perks and helps grow our little community. And lastly, if you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and TikTok under the handle SP_Filmviewers. Once again, thank you very much for listening, and we will speak to you next time.